that we're hosting today in our BioSwitch project. Very warm welcome to everybody. I am Anna Tenhonen and I act as the project coordinator for BioSwitch. And I work for Click Innovation, which is operating from Finland. So a very sunny yet cold welcome and hellos from Finland to everybody. I think we have a quite nice participant profile today. So we are really hitting the pan-European mark as said in the title. Good. So let's go through a few practicalities of the workshop for today. All but the presenters are muted and only the presenters' cameras will be on during their presentations. This is just to ensure that everybody has a good line to participate. And if you have any questions, comments, other inputs, ideas, just feel free to type them into the chat. And our BioSwitch experts will answer the questions in the chat as the questions come in. So during their presentations, feel free to write them in. If we have time, we will pick up some questions to be answered online. But otherwise, we will be doing that in the chat. And also, if there are any questions that we didn't have time to answer, we will make sure to get back to you on those questions. And I want to remind everybody that this session is recorded and it will be uploaded to YouTube afterwards, so everybody can see it from there afterwards. And just to go over our agenda today. So first we have a short introduction into our BioSwitch project. So I will be giving you a short insight into what our project is really about. Then we will dive into these core themes of our framework presented by our BioSwitch experts. And then after we have these short introductions into these topics, we will dive into this interactive session. That's the co-creation part of our workshop. And there we will be using this Miro board that Emily will help you get acquainted with. It's a quite nice tool to be using in this time when we can't really meet face to face. So we've had really good experiences with other workshops that we've held. So I look very much forward to going through all the questions there with you guys and getting your input and insights and expertise on the topics. So then if we jump to the introduction of our BioSwitch project, our BioSwitch project really puts the brand owners into the center of everything. So our aim is to support the brand owners when they are switching or thinking about switching to bio-based solutions. And how we do that, we create this innovative ecosystem around to support that. And when I say brand owners, we are talking both B2B and B2C brand owners. And our aim is really to support the European bioeconomy and bring it to the forefront of the bio-based economy and support that by encouraging and supporting the brand owners. And we are a 2-year project. We started last year in June, and we will be running still until 2020, end of May. So we are about 8 months into our project. We have about €1 million budget, and we have 8 partners in the consortium. And we have received the funding from the Bio-Based Industries Joint Undertaking under the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program. So what we aim to do in BioSwitch, we have identified the challenge where the brand owners, they have some risks and fears when they are thinking about switching to bio-based. So we want to respond appropriately to that, what kind of perceptions the brand owners may have when they are thinking about switching to bio-based. And the part of how we can support the brand owners in this is to identify these advantages, incentives, motivations, and best practices that can drive the brand owners to initiate the switch. So really supporting and mitigating the risks is something that we really want to do in our project. And to do this, we have this framework that we're developing. So we're putting together this comprehensive multidisciplinary framework that is supposed to support, incentivize, motivate, and drive the brand owners to switch to bio-based solutions. So our solution that we are building in BioSwitch, it's a holistic systemic approach, and it has these two pillars that it's built upon. So first part is this framework that I already shortly mentioned. So there we have the brand owners in the center of different events, actions, research, reviews, interviews that we've been doing. So it's a very comprehensive framework that we are building around the brand owners. And today our workshop is one of the final activities in putting that framework in place. Then another very interesting pillar into our project is this BioSwitch toolbox that we are putting together. So it's this instrument, a tool that can assist brand owners in switching to bio-based solutions. So there we are helping you assess the sustainability, but also help you in building value chains, which is of course something that is typically known to be quite a bottleneck sometimes, to be able to go into switching into the bio-based solutions. So the methodology, again, just shortly to recap it, it's a framework. So the stage one, we are quite at the end phase of it. So we've done a lot of mapping, analysis, interviews, surveys, questionnaires. We've been reviewing a lot of existing literature and studies to build on this framework from different angles that we'll be going through today. Then we've had these 4 regional workshops that we have then validated our findings and gotten support into what are the main solutions or risks, challenges, what the brand owners are facing. And now today we have built up to the kind of final ladder. We have the Pan-European Co-Creation Workshop, where all of the kind of surveys, the studies that we've done, interviews, the regional workshops are now feeding into, and we'll be finalizing our work on the framework together here today with you guys. Then we have the toolbox development, the toolbox validation, and then we are really putting emphasis on how to roll out and replicate the whole BioSwitch concept. So we have different workshops that go into supporting the value chain building, that go into activities that support testing and validating the tool, sustainability analysis, and so on. And we also have produced a very extensive communication materials already at this point to really support and help brand owners who are thinking about switching to find support in actually carrying that out. Here's a little sneak peek into what one of the framework activities produced. So this was a survey of the needs, risks, and motivations of brand owners. And we had over 60 brands across 8 countries, covering all 4 key sectors of BioSwitch. So the food, agriculture, forestry, and chemistry sectors. And I think just one thing that I want to highlight, James will go very deeply into this soon in his presentation, but the study concluded that 85% of brand owners who don't currently include bio-based ingredients would actually consider doing that in the future. So you can see we had a very comprehensive point of views, answers, replies. We have produced already quite many deliverables on the topic. So you will hear more about all of the studies that we have done. So like I said, we had these 4 regional co-creation workshops, and they feed today into this pan-European workshop. And I noticed that we had some similar faces than we had in the regional workshops. That's really great. It's really good to see you again today in the pan-European workshop. So the idea is now to build upon the regional ones. So definitely we'll be giving you new insights into the presentations, new findings, building upon the regional workshops also. And then the interactive session will of course be then again building upon those regional ones that we had. So definitely, in case you've been into our regional workshop earlier, this will just build upon on your experience from that session, and hopefully give you new ideas and insights again. But I think that's enough from my side. Let's go into James' presentation on the results of needs, risks, and motivations for brand owners and consumers to switch to bio-based solutions. And while James gets his microphone and camera on, I just wanted to remind you that please, at any time, if you have questions, write them in the chat. We're going through them, and we really look forward to your inputs, ideas, comments, questions. So anything that pops into your mind, please send it to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Morning, everyone. My name is James Gaffey. I'm representing the Munster Technological University, and I'm going to talk about some of the work that we've done, particularly on the brand owner perspective side so far within the BioSwitch project. Next slide, please, Anna. So the main focus of our work has been assessing the barriers, risks, and incentives of brands switching to bio-based. I'll focus mainly on the barriers and risks, and later John will talk a little bit about the incentives. In terms of the methodology, and Anna has touched on this, we conducted initially a pan-European survey and interviews with 60 brand participants across 8 countries. These results were then fed into regional workshops across 4 countries, Belgium, Denmark, Finland, and Spain, with a total of 122 participants. And these ranged from brand owners to consumers to industry, academia, public administration. And the focus of those workshops were to try to analyze the brand responses, but also to propose solutions on how we could support brand owners in uptake of bio-based products, taking into account the risks and barriers identified, and also more broadly to support market uptake of bio-based products. And then finally, this pan-European workshop will hopefully provide with a broader range of views, new insights and solutions to risks and barriers faced by brands in the switch to bio-based. Next slide, please, Anna. So as I said, the main focus of our work was to understand the risks and barriers, but we also looked more broadly to get some brand owner perspectives in relation to bio-based products. So things like brand owner appetite for uptake of bio-based products, brand owner perceptions on consumer demand and consumer drivers for uptake of bio-based products. So I'll just look a little bit at those first. So from our surveys, we found that overall the brand owner interest in bio-based products was strong. 85% of brands, as Anna mentioned, who don't currently use bio-based ingredients or products within their branded products would be interested in doing so in future. And when we look specifically at the area of bio-based packaging, which is a hot topic, this increased to 95%. When we looked at the different types of products that brand owners were interested in, we found that packaging was the main product of interest. It's probably not a product, but certainly there's a lot of interest in bio-based packaging among the brands that we interviewed and surveyed. Other products of interest were inclusion of bio-based ingredients within food and flavor products, personal care and cosmetics, fertilizers, animal feed, construction materials, and pesticides. When we looked at the main brand motivations for uptake of bio-based products, we found that the 2 key motivations for brands were meeting customer demand as well as meeting the company's own sustainability targets. Other motivations indicated were things like green marketing opportunities, also improved product functionality. So the fact that you could potentially improve your products by integration of bio-based ingredients, and also legislative drivers as well. When we looked then to try and gauge the brand owner perception on consumer growth and consumer drivers for bio-based products, and a little bit later, Kaisa will look in more detail at what the consumer views are, but 75% of brands expect moderate to strong growth in their consumer demand over the next 5 years. And the main drivers for customer demand, according to the brand owners, were consumer demand for products with low environmental impact, also improved customer demand for or improved customer awareness of bio-based products. And we also got unique insights into the brand owner perspective, in the fact that brands now see millennials as a key driver of decisions around consumption choices, and their greater awareness of sustainability issues could be a key factor also. Next slide, please, Anna. Okay, so getting on to the main focus of our survey and interviews to try and understand the main barriers that brands face in switching to bio-based products. We found from our European survey that overall the cost of bio-based products was the biggest barrier that brands faced. 58% of brands indicated this to be the case. So bio-based products being seen as being more expensive than fossil-based incumbent products. We also found that uncertainty around functional performance was one of the standout barriers for brands as well, with 54% indicating this to be the case. Incompatibility with existing process was a little bit further down at 32%. So concerns around the fact that maybe if they switch to include a bio-based ingredient or product within their process, it might require process adaptations to take into account that new ingredient. 27% indicated feedstock or ingredient supply uncertainties, so concerns around whether there was going to be a readily available supply chain if they decided to change their process to include bio-based ingredients or products. 24% indicating regulatory challenges in placing the product on the market. When we looked at how these European results compared to our results from our regional workshops, overall we found that it was quite consistent, with Belgium, Finland, and Spain also indicating cost to be the main barrier that their brands face in switching to bio-based products or ingredients. Denmark was an outlier. There was less of a focus on the cost of the product and more concern around the uncertainty around the functional performance of the bio-based ingredients or products. Next slide, please, Anna. We then looked at the main risks associated with bio-based products, and from our pan-European survey, we found poor functionality identified as the top risk at 61%, with incompatibility with existing processes next at 52%, uncertainty around future regulation at 48%, in feedstock or ingredient supply uncertainties at 41%, and insufficient customer demand or consumer demand at 38%. Looking at how this was responded to regionally within our regional workshops, we found poor functionality as the main risk identified in Denmark and Finland, followed by incompatibility with existing process, which was indicated as the main risk in Belgium and Spain. We also found an additional top risk in Spain around insufficient consumer demand, which was more apparent in Spain than some of the other regional countries. And next slide, please, Anna. And during the regional workshops, we wanted to not just get their opinion on the risks and barriers that brands face in switching to bio-based products, but also helping us to provide solutions to try and overcome some of these risks that brands face, and more broadly risks associated with market uptake of bio-based products. These risks were generally, we were able to break them down into 6 different categories. So policy, R&D, education and knowledge, investment, labeling standards and certification, and stakeholder engagement. So just to go through some of the examples of the solutions that were provided, on the policy side, there's a solution around a requirement for a minimum percentage of bio-based content in certain packaging or products, a carbon tax on products, removal of fossil subsidies, providing a level playing field for bio-based products with already incentivized bioenergy options. Also, greater knowledge and certainty around future regulation, which can inform potentially investments and decisions by brands and other stakeholders to switch to bio-based. When we looked at education and knowledge, it was felt there's agreed a need to help consumers better recognize bio-based products, also to educate and demonstrate the benefits of bio-based products to brands and consumers, ensuring greater media attention for bio-based products, and also to circulate good case studies and success stories, which is one of the things that we're doing within the BioSwitch project. Around labeling standards and certification, one of the solutions was around clearer labeling of bio-based products, but also clearer instructions regarding end-of-life management for retailers, for brand owners, so they can know this for themselves, but also to be able to pass this information on to the consumers. On the R&D side, we mentioned about a barrier and a risk associated with poor functionality or perceived poor functionality. It was felt that investment in R&D can help to overcome these risks. Also, it's felt that there's a need for more comparative studies looking at bio-based products versus fossil-based incumbents in specific applications. More comparative studies also looking at the LCA and environmental impact of comparative products. Also, greater market and consumer research on bio-based products to help inform the brand owners of what consumers are looking for in bio-based alternative products. When it comes to investment, it was felt and a solution was put forward around investment in scaling up bio-based production to reduce the cost of products, so the cost can be more, products can be more cost competitive by increasing economies of scale. And on the stakeholder engagement side, it's felt that there's a need for more collaborative research between brands and industry to develop suitable products. Also, greater industry dialogue with regulators to look at what policy options could be put in place. And those were some of the main solutions that were provided during our workshop. Later in this seminar, Emily is going to be facilitating a workshop, and we'll be trying to expand on those and get your options on what some of those solutions could be to the risks and barriers that brands face in switching to bio-based products. In the meantime, back to you, Anna.
Thank you, James. Very well summarized the comprehensive data that we have. There are a lot of questions to you, James, in the chat. If you can continue there, they're very interesting, but I think we are we should move on to the next presentation as our time is rather strict. So James, please answer the questions in the chat, and then let's take Kaisa and have her presenting the results of our EU consumer drivers and motivation study.
Thank you, Anna, and good morning also on my behalf. So my name is Kaisa Vehmas, and I'm coming from Technical Research Center of Finland. So let's go to our results. So next slide, please, Anna. So this presentation is based on two different studies we have implemented in BioSwitch project. So we had a qualitative study among Finnish consumers, and then another one, quantitative questionnaire for Ireland and Netherlands. And this is the reason why I need to kind of present these results a bit differently for qualitative and quantitative studies in my presentation. However, I'm going to do some consumer awareness related results and also consumption habits towards these bio-based products. Next slide, please. So when we asked from the Finnish consumers that if they kind of if they have heard about these bio-based products before, you can see from here that about 3 out of 4 consumers they were aware of these bio-based products and brands. Next slide, please. Then we present them 2 different definitions for what do we mean with a bio-based products. The first definition was the one created by European Committee for Standardization, and then the other one created by USDA Bio-Preferred Program. And like you can see from the results, Finnish consumers felt that they can understand both of these definitions quite nicely. Probably the first one, a bit shorter one, was a bit more clearer for them. Next slide, please. And organic, natural, ecological, those were the first word association for Finnish consumers when talking about bio-based products. Next slide, please. This was very nice result we received from both from Netherlands and Ireland, that consumers feel that they individual choices can really have a positive impact on environment. And these consumers also told that they are really looking for bio-based products when shopping. Among Finnish consumers, they were more looking for certain brands they are already familiar with, and they were not so actively looking for bio-based products in the shops. Probably the biggest reason for this was also that the Finnish consumers felt that it's not easy to find bio-based products among all the products that are available. Next slide, please. But then we asked from the consumers in different countries that in which category they would most likely buy bio-based products in the future. And here in all the cases, the packaging products were among the top interesting products. So this is a very nice result, because this is nicely in line with the results we received from the stakeholder studies that James just presented for you. So also consumers are looking for bio-based packaging solutions. In addition to that, consumers are interested in bio-based disposable products, cleaning, hygiene, and sanitary products. Also, about a third of these respondents were looking for bio-based clothing and textiles. And among Finnish consumers, there were interest also towards bio-based cosmetics and personal care products. Next slide, please. Then we defined that what would motivate consumers to buy these bio-based options. And of course, there were first some issues related to the price of the products. So consumers were looking for price reduction. They felt that they are a bit expensive at the moment. And also among the Finnish consumers, they were looking for some financial incentives. But in addition to this price issue, I think that the kind of hot topic here was the information that should be available. Some of the consumers were looking for reliable information on product end life. Some consumers were more interested in getting information about the innovation, what is behind the bio-based option. And in addition to these, consumers were also looking for information on the whole value chain. So what are the different factors affecting the production of these bio-based options? Then it was also highlighted that these bio-based options should be easily recognizable in the market. And of course, consumers were assuming that there should be wide availability of these bio-based products. Next slide, please. This was a very nice result because consumers really emphasized that they are looking for, or they are aiming to buy more bio-based products in the future. And in the case of the survey we implemented in the Netherlands and Ireland, we were also asking a bit more in detail that what kind of products do they feel that they will buy more in the future. And here again, these packaging products that are produced from the bio-based materials was the most interesting for them. And then they were also aiming that they are consuming more disposable products and cleaning, hygiene and sanitary products in the future. Next slide, please. And like I already mentioned before, that this communication is very important issue, because consumers are willing to get more information about these products and their sustainability and things like that. So they really emphasize that this information should be easily available. And of course, different people kind of are looking for different kind of information. So there are people who are looking for fact-based knowledge based on research. Some of them are kind of looking for documents and other, for example, articles from the newspapers and so on. And some consumers prefer discussing with their families and friends about these issues and so. So there is a clear need for more information, and there should be data easily available in different channels for different user groups. And next slide, please. So there is still my contact information. So this was my presentation about the consumer study results. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaisa. We have one question for you. We can quickly take that. Were the Dutch and Irish not surveyed on the financial incentives, as there was no data for these countries on the slide?
Yeah, there were some differences between these studies. So in the case if I have not presented that data there, it's not available.
Okay, good. There seems to be coming a few more questions, so if you jump onto the chat, Kaisa, to answer those.
Yes.
And we will take now John to give us his presentation. Thank you, Kaisa.
Thank you, Anna, for the introduction, and good morning to everybody. My name is John Vos from Biomass Technology Group. We're a Dutch SME, and it is my pleasure to tell you something about the incentives that can stimulate brand owners to develop and market bio-based solutions. I conducted a desk research. Next slide, please, Anna. And I used a categorization of incentives that I kindly adopted from another CSA project called Power for Bio. There is a differentiation between two groups. On the one hand, there are hard measures, and on the other hand, there are soft measures. And within these categories, you find further specification, which I will get to in a minute. Also, it's good to know that the overview I'm presenting is illustrative rather than comprehensive, and it is showcasing a selection of incentives, primarily those that are relevant at the European 27 level. In the 6 categories, there is one that I will not discuss in a lot of detail. This is the voluntary approaches. Voluntary approaches that are schemes whereby firms make commitments to improve their environmental performance. And these approaches typically encourage rather than force people or businesses to show the desired behavior. In my research, I came across 2 examples from the plastics sector. There's a line in the sand, which seeks to eliminate plastic waste at source. And there's also the European Plastics Pact that sets targets for signatories that by the year 2025, all packaging shall be reusable or at least recyclable. These 2 codes of conduct, code of good practice from the plastic sector also help stimulate the use of biodegradable packaging. However, if you look at the broader picture, what is supporting the bioeconomy at large or bio-based products in general, then there does not seem to be a lot of relevant initiatives yet in this category, so I'm not covering it further today. But let's now move on to look at the various incentives. First of all, direct regulation. Direct regulation refers to legislation that requires certain behavior of market actors, and compliance is obligatory, as the actors can be punished for non-compliance. And when you rule out bioenergy and biofuels, which are both outside the scope of BioSwitch, where we look at, as Anna said, bio-based products, including packaging for B2B and B2C markets. If you rule out these bioenergy options, then there seem to be very few direct regulation measures in place at the European level. Some relevance have two directives, such as the Waste Framework Directive, as well as the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive, which are expected to increase the use of bio-based recyclable packaging and bio-based compostable packaging. Well, again, examples of where packaging is being supported, and I guess this helps explain why this is such a hot topic. And also interesting is green public procurement. Green public procurement refers to the public sector purchasing products and services that cause minimal adverse environmental impacts. And procurement of bio-based products can be seen as a specific type of this green public procurement. It has considerable success in the United States at the federal level. And you may have heard about the bio-preferred program, and Kajsa just mentioned it, that definition in her presentation. But the efforts in the European Union seem to have been less impactful to date. I was part of a project looking into bio-based procurement by public procurers called ImproBio, and there we found that there is just some initial initiatives in maybe the Netherlands, Germany, and some other countries, but not much is going on yet, although the expectations a decade ago were pretty high. But maybe this may develop in the further future. Next slide. The second category of the hard measures is economic instruments. And this includes investment grants and subsidies, loans and loan guarantees, tradable certificates, feed-in tariffs or premiums, tax incentives, etc. And at the European level, this type of measure is particularly important. Each of the four listed European research programs, there's Horizon 2020 and the BBIJU, and for the coming years, there's Horizon Europe and the planned European Partnership for a Circular Bio-based Europe. They have budgets for bioeconomy research, development, and innovation in the order of several billions of euro. Even at an annual basis, this still means that several hundreds of millions of euro are available each year. And you may have seen that the BBIJU reported last month that under its last call, it would fund 18 new projects, and these would receive a total of 105 million euros. So there's substantial funding available under this European programs. I said I would cover just the European incentives today. It's good to know that national incentives may have even larger volumes to support research. That really depends on the individual country and its priorities. Next item I'd like to mention is the European Circular Bioeconomy Fund. This is the first venture fund that is exclusively focused on investments in bioeconomy in Europe. It has a targeted fund size of 250 million euro, and it typically would invest between 2.5 and 10 million. And if you make a quick calculation, that means that several tens and possibly up to 100 companies can get funding from the ECBF. Then support can also target the production of biochemicals. And I mention here that in the US, the state of Iowa is operating the Renewable Chemical Production Tax Credit Scheme, which incentivizes the production of 30 high-value chemicals that are derived from biomass feedstock. And this example from Iowa was later followed by other states as Nebraska, Maine, Kentucky, and New Mexico. And last month, or actually last month of last year, there was a federal bill tabled, the Renewable Chemicals Act, in the House of Representatives that would also seek to support the production of biochemicals. So outside of Europe, this is something that is gaining attention. There's not much going on, as far as I know, at the European level or individual countries yet. The Netherlands is considering to support the inclusion of the production of bioethylene from ethanol or bionaphtha in a sustainable energy production support scheme. But that was all I could find. Next slide, please, Anna. Now I'm turning to the soft measures. As I said, the voluntary approaches I will not cover in detail. The second category there is the information and advice sharing systems. So maybe a bit unusual terminology, but as I said, I adopted this from Powerful Bio. There seems to be an increasing number and a wide variety of initiatives that seek to share information and advice on bioeconomy topics. There are web portals and platforms, like the one that is run by the Knowledge Center on Bioeconomy from the Commission's Joint Research Center. There is the digital bioeconomy platform that BIC, the private partner in the bio-based industries joint undertaking, has set up. There are, of course, at project level, a wide range of initiatives. For instance, there is the European Bioeconomy Library that was set up by the LIFT project. Our own BioSwitch project is making available a map who can help me. Third option here, third category, are business networks and clusters that appear in many different forms, including many different forms, and some of these networks are actually a partner in the BioSwitch project. There are ad hoc working groups set up for a specific purpose, and last but certainly not least are informal contacts and channels to engage with, for example, other economic actors within or outside the value chain. And when we did the case studies, the fact sheets on best practice case studies, this was mentioned by several of the brand owners, that particularly these informal contacts outside of all the formalized schemes was also very important to progress. Next slide, please. Now we're turning to the market-based signaling approaches, and this includes, for example, labeling, traceability, and voluntary certification schemes. And voluntary product standards would also fit in this category. These approaches are often related to informational problems, and the lack of information about product quality, for example, which hinders the proper functioning of markets. And regarding bio-based products, there are various mechanisms in place. For example, some of the categories and applications covered under multi-issue eco-labels, like the European eco-label, the Nordic eco-label, the SWAN, and the Blue Angel eco-label from Germany, to mention just a few examples. And there are also voluntary sustainability certification schemes that prove the sustainability of biomass used as a raw material, the bio-based carbon content, or the end-of-life options of bio-based products. Next slide. Finally, there is a category of other measures and instruments. And here we find, for example, vision documents, as the one that was issued by BIC in 2019. Roadmaps, such as the roadmap for the chemical industry in Europe towards a bioeconomy that was issued by the Road to Bio project, and strategies. Now, strategies that can relate either to geographical areas or to economic sectors. And with regard to the bioeconomy, we see quite a lot of these first type emerging. So strategies relating to geographical areas, that's individual member states and even regions within member states. And also the updated bioeconomy strategy from 2018 highlighted the relevance of developing such strategies and action plans at the country level. However, if you look at the industry level, no specific European policies and legislation exist in sectors which traditionally use biomass, such as textile, wood and wooden furniture, and pulp and paper sectors. They are covered by cross-cutting initiatives and policies instead. Discussing further details of strategies and policies is beyond the time that I was allocated today. So let me move on to the wrap-up. When we presented this same topic in the interactive section of our workshop series held in January, the following incentive measures were mentioned the most frequently, as you see them tabulated here. Okay. Interesting incentive measures were being mentioned for all the categories that I covered today, except for the other measures and instruments category. And some words about what was mentioned. Direct regulation, national targets. These are in place for biochemicals to the extent that they are being used in road transport. But as I said, energy is really outside the scope of BioSwitch. The idea to also support materials is not new. Already in 2014, the Nova Institute from Germany came up with the idea to expand the RED, the Renewable Energy Directive, to a Renewable Energy and Materials Directive. So this is an interesting thought that that's been on the table for a while. The enforcement of a percentage share of bio-based ingredients is something that is effectuated in the US. It is a key element of the bio-preferred program that I mentioned earlier. This is the federal public procurement scheme that aims to boost bio-based production in the US. If you look at the economic instruments, financial support for the development of bio-based products and components, yeah, this is very much covered in the different research programs that I mentioned, Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, as well as the public-private partnerships on bioeconomy. And also it is key on the European Circular Bioeconomy Fund. Then the idea of a carbon taxation. This is being considered by more and more European member states, as this could give a real boost if the scope would cover relevant production processes. So yeah, if bio-based production can be an alternative for fossil-based production, then certainly a carbon tax would give a huge boost to the bio-based option. I think that the relevance of improved supply chains, or maybe I should say value chains, or even value webs and value circles, as the terminology is developing, has established itself firmly. I told you just before that the number of bioeconomy clusters and networks is gradually expanding. And setting up innovation ecosystems is a topic which we have seen appear in recent Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe work programs. A recent example is the InPresMe project that is being led by VTT, which has as the target that it will function as an ecosystem involving the development of recyclable and or biodegradable packaging, energy and vehicle solutions and other consumer goods. Then last but not least, there is the standardized bio-based labeling. Labeling was already a research topic in the Open Bio project, which started in November 2013. And interesting to note is that it will become a research topic again in Horizon Europe Cluster 6 call, according to the draft work program, where it would address transparency of bio-based products and information to consumers and public authorities through effective and robust business to consumers labeling on products traceability, quality, carbon footprints, and other environmental footprints. So to conclude, a number of the suggestions that were put on the table have been there already in one way or another for a longer time. I'm really interested to see where we stand today, where the priorities are today. And I'm excited to learn future ideas of today's audience on this topic. And therefore, we'll now hand over to Emily to introduce this interactive session. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, John. Let's directly jump on to the interactive session as we're running a little bit behind schedule. So Emily, please.
Thank you, Anna. Hello, everyone. I'm Emily Marsh from MTU in Ireland, and I'll be bringing you through the interactive session today. This is a co-creation workshop for shaping solutions for a global set of solutions for perceived risks when switching from fossil-based to bio-based approaches. So the main objective of this is to develop a set of solutions for the main risks and barriers, to provide recommendations on how to stimulate growth in consumer demand, and also to incentivize bio-based uptake among brand owners. So this workshop is held in Miro. I've shared the link in the chat function there. You should see it on the right-hand side of your screen. So if you please link open, can you hear me? I could just see there's
Yeah, it's a bit low.
Yes.
If you can pump up your volume a little bit, I think.
I will hold it directly to my mouth. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
now.
Thank you. So if you open the link, and can you please keep Zoom open in the background, so you can hopefully hear me, and then please follow instructions within the Miro board. So if you please click on the link and open the Miro board, I will share the screen of Miro within Zoom, but in order to be able to interact with the board, you have to have it open in your web browser. So thank you.
And if you have any challenges, please write into the chat. I will try to help you while Emily guides us through the interactive session.
Hello, yeah, so welcome to the interactive session of in Miro. We would like everyone to please contribute. The board is anonymous, so we would like to capture your ideas and recommendations for efficient solutions to mitigate the potential risks and barriers of switching to bio-based approaches. So if everyone can follow me, some of you might be familiar with Miro, but I will just go through some of the main guides to using it.
Emily, at the moment we are, now we're at your slide. That's fine.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, so if you can see to navigate around the board, you can use the mouse to click and drag the board around different locations, and you can use the wheel to zoom in and out. And if you're on a trackpad or touchscreen, you just use to pinch in and out. So like that, if you're lost, I will hopefully bring you around the board. But if you are lost, if you click the yellow icon at the top right, you should snap to where I am on the board. So then the main tools you'll be using in this is the sticky notes function. I can see some of you already have that. Is the second icon on the left-hand sidebar. So this is what you'll be using to provide your answers within the board. The next icon down then is the comments. You can use this to comment on other people's answers, and then there's connection lines to make connections between various answers. So we'll go straight in to the first question, icebreaker question, so you can test out those sticky note functions properly. So I'll just make sure everyone is on the same board. So if you click that sticky note function and press it on the board, you can input, please, what is the name of your organization? So you can resize your sticky note as well. I think there's some quite large ones coming on. So if you click on size and go to small, the post-it notes are very large. So if you click on the post-it note, mine is coming up quite small. So make sure everyone is using the sticky note function, not any other other tools. And if you zoom in, if you press 100% on the screen, it should frame it, and the sticky note should come up smaller than. Yes, that's good now. So thank you for that. I will move on to the first poll. So the first poll is as we were looking to develop a multi-actor set of solutions, we would like to get an idea on the range of stakeholders we have here today. So this poll is through a voting system. I will start the voting now, and you have one option to please select what type of stakeholder best represents your organization. So I am starting the voting now. You can press the vote now on the right side of your screen, and to select your option, you press the plus icon on the option you would like to select. So that is one vote to select the option that best fits what type of organization you are, please. So when you are finished, you can press done. And again, this voting is anonymous, and any answers you give on this board will be anonymous. So please indicate what type of stakeholder you are. So thank you very much for voting. So we have a lot from industry and academia here today. That is great. We'll move on to the first question then. So now that you are familiar with the board, I would like to move on to shaping the first set of solutions for barriers to bio-based approaches. So I will just make sure everyone has followed me.
Good. Thanks. I was just about to say.
Oh, thank you, Anna. Yes. Yeah, so these are the results from the regional workshop. As Anna mentioned, we had 4 workshops in January in Finland, Belgium, Spain, and Denmark. So the main barriers that was coming out of those workshops were indicated cost and uncertainty around functional performance are coming out clearly as the 2 main barriers. So there is also uncertainty around end-of-life management. This was prioritized as a higher barrier to bio-based uptake in the regional workshops than was in the pan-European survey. So that was a slight difference there, and probably due to the multi-actor responses within the workshop. So to build on this and to validate these main barriers from the regional workshops and also the questionnaire, an updated set of barriers have been produced, and we now like to ask you to vote to jointly develop a set of perceived barriers to bio-based uptake among companies and brands. So this is similar to the stakeholder. It is a voting system again, but this time you have 3 votes. There will be 2 minutes on the timer. So please indicate what you consider are the top 3 barriers. So again, you will have 3 votes for this. I'm starting the voting now. So please press vote now on the right-hand side to begin your vote. And then for your option, you press the plus icon to select your options. So you please select 3 options. The options are too expensive, concerns around sustainability of feedstock, insufficient consumer demand, lack of supporting policies, incompatibility with existing processes, uncertainty around functional performance, lack of standardized certification, ingredient supply changes, lack of knowledge on the environmental and social and economic benefits, regulatory challenges in placing the product on the market, uncertainty of end-of-life management, and concerns around environmental impacts. So you can choose 3 options. So to please indicate your what you consider the top 3 barriers to bio-based uptake among brand owners. And again, if anyone has any issues with anything on the board, you can input it into the chat function in Zoom and we will pick up on that.
Please activate the vote.
The vote is being activated if you press on the vote now that comes up on the left hand side, or if there you can see a thumbs up icon on the bottom, that will bring it up for you.
Did everybody manage to vote? If somebody missed the voting button.
No, I could not.
Okay. Do you mind writing in the chat your? Okay, there were actually quite many who weren't able to vote. Emily, should we do that again?
Okay, perhaps I'll reset it. Yes.
Yes.
Perhaps you can go over a question while I'm resetting the voting session.
Yes. Yes. So let's take again the top 3 barriers that you think are the most important. Let's do it again since we lost a few who couldn't vote. So on the left-hand side in your Miro board, there will be this vote now button that you can click. And Emily, isn't it so that everybody has to redo the voting now?
Yes, please. Yes, I'm resetting the voting. Yes, so if everyone could vote again, please.
Yeah. So now you have had a few more minutes to look at the different options. So in case you want to change your mind, it's also possible now. But please re-vote as soon as Emily is able to reset it.
Okay, I'm resetting the voting now, so hopefully it should
That's
work
there.
this time. Ah, that's great. Yes.
Great.
So if you press vote now, and you can start the voting.
Good. So at least a lot of mouses are flying here and there. So click on the vote now on the left-hand side and you're able to do the voting.
There are 12 options, so please pick your top 3, what you consider the top 3 barriers. They are too expensive, concerns around sustainability of feedstock, insufficient consumer demand, lack of supporting policies, incompatibility with existing processes, uncertainty around functional performance, lack of standardized certification, ingredient supply changes, lack of knowledge on the environmental, social, and economic benefits, regulatory challenges in placing the product on the market, uncertainty of end-of-life management, or concerns around environmental impacts.
People are now writing that it's working, so I think we now have everybody voting again. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that to me, the joys of technical issues.
I think this Miro board allows quite a lot of interaction that could also be that if we would have a face-to-face workshop, we wouldn't maybe be able to do everything. So
Yes, it's a good substitute. It's a good interactive board.
Stefan is now writing that it's locked for her or him. Could you, Stefan?
The voting is now finished, so perhaps that's the results should be coming up now. Yes. So the top 3 barriers indicated are lack of supporting policies, concerned around sustainability of feedstock, and uncertainty around functional performance. There's quite a few coming in close behind there as well, but we'll pick those as our top 3. So we will be moving on to the next section now. So we will use these top 3 barriers from the vote to develop a set of solutions around these. So I will bring everyone to the board. So you should be able to see shaping solutions for these main barriers now. So I'd like you to please, you can see that the board is divided into 3 sections. This is to allow you to give your responses to each. So we'll be inputting the main barriers. So thank you, James. I think, yes, thank you, James. You're putting those in for me. That's great. So under each of the top 3 barriers.
Emily, just call those out again. There's ingredient supply uncertainties, uncertainty around functional performance. What was the third one?
No, James, the first one is lack of supporting policies.
The second was concerns around sustainability of feedstock.
Yeah.
And number 3 already filled. So
There are quite many that have 7 votes that are coming as the third one.
Emily picked the first one to appear. I guess that was the fastest reply or so. I don't know why it's linked first, mentioned first. It's not alphabetical or anything. So
yeah. But maybe you can already start writing your solutions and ideas. How could we overcome the barrier of uncertainty around the functional performance? So again, with the notes, just add your ideas into the column. We will be putting in as quickly as we can the barrier 1 and barrier 2 onto the board as well.
So could you please provide your ideas, thoughts and comments, again, using the sticky note to develop a set of solutions regarding these barriers to bio-based approaches? So how would you address each of these issues? Recommendations for brand owners and how to overcome these perceived barriers to the bioeconomy? These barriers that could prevent companies and brand owners taking up bio-based approaches.
If you hit N on your keyboard, you have a kind of a quick shortcut into making a new sticky note. So N works well if you have lots of ideas and want to quickly put them on the board.
And I think 2 of these are new barriers versus the barriers indicated during the Pan-European survey. So lack of supporting policies and concern over sustainability of feedstock are new issues that weren't highlighted as prominently during the Pan-European survey. And certainly around functional performance was one of those that was highlighted. And we have some policy solutions coming in. So things like the bio-preferred policy, which John referred to, carbon tax with ring fence for tax to support bio-based, need for groups of interest to come together and agree on proposals.
Maybe while everybody's filling in their ideas, John and James, I could ask you a question that has come into the chat, that the main challenge is actually the lack of incentive for change. Do you see that the incentive to change, what is the kind of burning platform to stimulate the change? What could it be? Is this something that we're looking at altogether? All of the solutions that we are now proposing, do they support the incentives to change? Or how do you see the lack of interest?
well,
How could we address that?
I understand the comment, and actually I think that many of the economic actors, the market players, sort of are not waiting anymore for rules and regulations to come out of Brussels, but rather have an internal driver for higher sustainability. And that's because it's becoming a license to operate. Consumers are more and more demanding for sustainable solutions. They're not asking for bio-based products per se. I mean, for many consumers, they even have no idea what bio-based is if you ask them a bit deeper. But they definitely want more sustainability, and that holds for millennials, but also for other consumer groups, as we found in our survey. So yeah, it's good that there is some regulation, etc. But companies are already moving at a higher speed. Having said that, of course, they have to. We're living in economic reality, meaning that it needs to be viable for them one way or another. Maybe you can accept a lower profit margin if it helps to give you a better image and therefore improve your potential in the longer term. And yeah, regarding level playing field, bioenergy was mentioned, and I mentioned it myself. I think a very common, I'm not sure if the word complaint is the right one, but concern is that bioenergy and biofuels are being promoted through the renewable energy directives. This increases the price for feedstock, for biomass feedstock, and therefore hampers the development of higher value applications based on biomass.
Yeah, so you think that companies are becoming more proactive and find the market advantage through responding to the consumer demands rather than just acting according to the policies?
That is my personal impression, but I'm happy to hear views to the contrary.
I think that was something that came out of the motivations analysis as well, where the main drivers for brands switching to bio-based seem to be around consumer demand and also their own company sustainability targets. There were options in there around potentially getting greater revenue for including bio-based products, but it wasn't as high on the list. Green marketing wasn't as high on the list. So it does seem to be, as John indicates, more of companies taking the initiative.
Yeah, it definitely held true for the 6 companies that we are covering in our best practice case study series. They all have, I would almost say, sustainability in their DNA. And some have started already a long time ago looking for bio-based solutions. Others joined a couple of years ago. But this set of best practice case studies, it covers all 4 sectors that our project focuses on, a very different kind of products. And it's meant to illustrate that there are opportunities in many sectors across the bioeconomy.
But then again,
I think Emily is probably ready to continue.
Yeah, well, we're just...
It's good to get a discussion going. Yeah, I'll move on to the shaping solutions first to bio-based approaches now. So thank you for your inputs, and moving on now to the risks. So as companies and brand owners often have uncertainties around the bioeconomy and switching to bio-based approaches, and when asked what they see as the main risks associated with bio-based product uptake, at a pan-European level, 61% of brands indicated poor functionality and 52% indicated incompatibility with existing processes. So the main risks, according to the regional stakeholders in Finland, Belgium, Spain, and Denmark, align with these results, indicating a concern over the challenges associated with a seamless transition to bio-based alternatives. So there were some variations to the regional survey results and the workshop results, with brand owners with insufficient consumer demand ranking much higher in the regional survey compared to the workshop results, especially for Spain. And for the Finnish brand owners, indicating risks being uncertainty over future regulations. So the main categories of solutions that were provided at the regional workshops, these were categorized into Finland for education and knowledge transfer. Belgium was coming out as research and development, and then stakeholder engagement and investment were also categories coming out of that, the solutions. So to analyze these perceived risks, we will now jointly prioritize an updated set of risks, again, to gather a multi-actor view. So we will, hopefully this voting will work, but please let me know if, again, this voting system isn't working. So I'll start the vote now for voting risks. So please press vote now. That should come up on your right-hand side. Has it come up for everyone? So could you please indicate what you consider are the top 3 risks when transitioning to bio-based approaches?
So again, click on the vote now button, the blue one on the left, so you can begin your voting.
So we have 2 minutes, and again, there's 3 votes to select 3 options. And the options are incompatibility with existing processes, poor functionality, insufficient consumer demand, supply chain uncertainty, uncertainty around future regulations, and
Cannot see the button.
it's not working again.
Should be on the top right corner.
There are a few who are
It's
saying that
not.
it's again locked.
Okay, well.
Okay.
Does it work on the board? Do you have anything on the right hand corner or then on the left hand pane? Does it either one do those work for you?
I would perhaps reset the vote. Is it not working for a lot of people?
I think reset, Emily. It didn't come up for
Okay.
me as well, so it's affecting people.
That's unfortunate, but yes, I'll reset the votes. Yeah.
Mm,
I think I can provide a little tip if it's okay.
definitely.
If you go on the bottom side of the page on the left hand, there are 2 arrows with a blue dot on top. If you click on it, there is a voting thumbs up. And if you press that, then the voting would come.
Ah, okay, that's great.
And that's because if you, it depends when you are on the screen, when that vote button comes on the top right. And if you don't see that immediately, then you just have to go on that bottom left side arrows.
I
So
just tried it, but it didn't work.
I think
I
it's
only see
because
votes completed.
I think
Let's
it's
do it
because
again.
Emily is restarting it. That's that's why.
Yes, let's do it again.
If
Okay.
refreshing the browser worked for me actually, so then the voting kind of popped up.
So I've restarted the vote now, so hopefully it'll come up for everyone.
It's there, yeah. At least for me.
Yes, work for me too. But please, if you have any challenges, shout out.
So again, you've 3 options to vote for what you consider are the top 3 risks. The options are incompatibility with existing processes, poor functionality, insufficient consumer demand, supply chain uncertainty, uncertainty around future regulations, and cost of production.
Maeve is asking, are people moving from Emily's screen on Zoom to Miro board? So you have to go into Miro through the link that we provided. So Emily's just sharing her screen to kind of host the session. I reposted the link that you can access the Miro through. So it's in the chat. So Emily can make you move to where she is. That can happen, but you have to be on the Miro to be able to vote. And
Yes,
give
to
your,
interact with the board, you have to have it open in your web browser.
yeah. If you happen to have multiple screens, then it's easier to have the Zoom open and look at that, and also your own board. Hopefully it's working now for everybody. At least nobody's saying that it's not working. So
Yeah, now we will now use the top 3 risks from this vote to develop a set of solutions around these top risks. So the voting results have come out, and it's supply chain uncertainty, cost of production, and uncertainty around future regulations are coming up as the top 3. So again, it is a similar board where it's divided into 3 sections. We'll be asking you to please provide solutions and mitigation actions for each of the identified top risks when transitioning from fossil-based to bio-based approaches. So the top 3 risks are supply chain uncertainty, cost of production, and uncertainty around future regulations. So could you please provide some solutions and mitigation actions around these, how to overcome these risks for brand owners when switching to bio-based approaches?
We see the first replies coming in. Yeah, being size reduced a bit. That's very helpful.
And supply chain uncertainty and cost of production are new risks which weren't prioritized as quite as highly in our European study.
Do you mean the review?
Excuse me?
Do you mean the review or the interviews that we did?
From our pan-European survey.
Okay.
These are new risks that are being identified.
Yeah, I guess it really shows that different stakeholders have different perspectives. The situations may be different between countries. And yeah, to get a proper overview, we probably would have to organize a huge exercise, which is beyond our means. But it's good to get the different viewpoints.
Yes, and I think it's very good that we get good suggestions on solutions on how to mitigate these risks from a little bit of different perspective in the regional workshops, this pan-European, and then the interviews and the survey that we had.
This first barrier suggestion partnerships throughout the value chain. This is something which we also found from the brand owners covered in our case studies. Because if they switch to bio-based, they're going to use different ingredients. It means dealing with different, or at least potentially different suppliers.
So John, when you were doing these best practices case studies in our project, how much emphasis did the brand owners put on challenges that they had in building the value chains or finding those partnerships? Did they indicate that how big of a task was it for them?
Well, as far as I know, I was not in detail involved in each case study, but I overlooked the process. It was something mentioned by all, well, or nearly all.
We had a webinar on those best practices that's also available in YouTube. So if you have interest in that, make sure to check that webinar also out, the recording of it.
And for example, supply chain uncertainty, I think was at least one of the case studies, a key reason why they're not producing more bio-based products, in this case toys. They're using a drop-in chemical, and the availability of this is limited. They're not a huge operator. This is a Danish company with 50 staff, so they don't have an enormous market power, so to say. But if the supply was secured, they could easily produce more. They told us.
One thing we should probably highlight as well from today's workshop is that during our presentations, we only got to the snapshot, I think, of the results from our different surveys and interviews. We have a number of publications coming out over the next few months, both on the brand owner risks and barriers, the consumer drivers, and also the incentives, which will elaborate a lot more, including some interesting regional comparisons between the participating countries. But just due to time, we weren't able to cover everything during the workshop today.
Yes, and I move on now to the consumer demands and motivations. So the barriers to uptake of by consumers is cost again, lack of consumer knowledge on the benefit of bio-based products, lack of on-the-market products, and uncertainty regarding the sustainability of bio-based products. So some of the solutions coming out of the regional workshops Public administration, researchers and consumers highlighted recommendations around increased awareness through information campaigns, standardized bio-based labeling, disincentivizing fossil-based products, and from industry, it was more on regulations and again on labeling and certification and other support for industry leaders to encourage others to follow. So to build on this now, I would like to ask you to provide a set of solutions to the main barriers of consumer demands. And again, this board, if you are a public administration, researcher or consumer, could you please provide your answer on the left, and on the right if you are industry or a brand owner. This is to capture the different viewpoints. So the question is, what would motivate and incentivize changes in consumer behavior to change from buying fossil-based to bio-based products? So if you could provide any recommendations for increasing consumer demand. From the Irish and Dutch consumer survey, we had the main motivations for consumers to buy bio-based products from that were lowering the price of the product, around reliable information on the environmental impact of the product, and products being easily recognized as being bio-based. So this ties in with the standardized certification and labeling for bio-based products. And overall, there's quite a positive outlook regarding future consumer demand from the survey. 75% of brands on an EU-wide level indicated strong to moderate growth in their consumer demand for bio-based product over the next 5 years. So it's quite positive.
Yeah, the various answers that are flowing in, some of them deal with awareness raising. Awareness raising so that consumers get better informed, but likewise also develop a better understanding for brand owners of the motivations of consumers for change. There is the suggestion for public procurement. So yeah, in my presentation, I briefly touched on green public procurement. Bio-based procurement can be seen as a special form of this. There's a suggestion for a clean and harmonized on-pack communication on benefits.
Yeah, it's important to deliver information in a meaning and understandable way for consumers.
Several comments relate to the price. A good one is, of course, that price cannot be the driver. We must account for the cost of nature and accept that cost cannot be everything.
We're quite tight on time, so I might quickly move on to it's the last question now on incentive measures. I'll leave you to give your final answers for the last question, but when you're ready to move over, follow me over to the incentive measures. So to simulate uptake of bio-based approaches by brand owners, these were the solutions coming out of the regional workshop. So again, we'd like to build on these. They were regarding standardized bio-based labeling, which come under market-based signaling approaches. There was economic instruments around financial support for development of bio-based products, and tax incentives and other direct regulations, enforcement of percentage share. So I will quickly go into the question.
I suggest you bring people over at this stage, Emily.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just letting people finish up with the last one. So now, yeah, this is the last question now. Could you please provide some incentives which could stimulate uptake of bio-based approaches by brand owners? So how to motivate brand owners to switch from fossil-based to bio-based approaches. So based on those categories and solutions, could you please expand and give more detail on incentive measures you would recommend?
Yeah, you don't have to limit yourself, of course, to the 6 examples listed above. I gave a broader overview of options, and probably there is more. The presentation was not covering each and every possibility. First suggestion is to reduce their climate footprint. This is indeed a big driver for companies. Taxing the fossil option more, which relates to carbon taxation. There's another suggestion regarding taxing. Public green procurement is mentioned again. Also, someone says that, as before, give them a framework backed by regulations set in stone, not able to be changed by elections, whereby there is no choice, as long as the bio-based is better in regard to the sustainability development goals. Positive incentive for percentage-based in products. This is the approach taken by the Bio-Preferred program in the US. They have identified a wide range of bio-based products, groups, and applications. And for each of these groups, they have set individual minimum bio-based shares, which are actually being increased over time. So in this way, they're also pushing the market to further innovate. It's a system in place at the federal level in the US. Of course, the US being a single country, it works with different legislation set up as we have in Europe. Ideally, we could implement something similar in Europe, but so far we have not found how that could be done at European level. There is room for individual countries to push it. And actually, there are some, I know of some examples from the Netherlands where even regional governments are stimulating bio-based procurement. For example, the province of Zeeland in the southwest of the Netherlands. Suggestion to work with green finance. And not unimportant is what is the impact with the bio-based choice to meet sustainability targets, which means that LCA data should be available to allow a comparison with the LCA of the fossil-based solution. Yeah, indeed. DG Environment in Brussels has always taken a very strict point of view that they will not promote bio-based outright. They will always ask, and rightfully so, what is the improved environmental performance of the product? And then they would be willing to back it up. And that requires, of course, a proof that could be in the form of LCA. LCAs are expensive, at least from the perspective of small and medium companies. So any sort of database with LCA information that can be made available is certainly a step in the good direction to solve this.
And I think, John, some discussions that I've had in a company where you have hundreds of brands and products, it's quite expensive to do full LCAs for all of those. So I think a database is a really smart way to go forward.
Yeah, of course, it's equally valid for multinational companies that have many brands and products. Yeah, LCAs are simply not cheap if you want to do them properly in compliance with the ISO or SEN standards.
And I just want to thank you guys already, everybody in the audience and participating in the workshop, that you have taken some extra minutes since we went a little bit overboard with our time. I see that there's still good ideas coming into the incentives for both the consumers and the brand owners part. So
Yes,
maybe,
thank you. When
yes.
you're finished your inputting your answers there, you could move back to Zoom for the closing of the session. I just want to thank you all very much for your contribution today to identify the incentives and motivations to encourage brand owners and consumers to switch, and the formulation of a set of recommendations. So this mirror board will remain
Your
open.
voice is a little low again.
This mirror board will remain open until Friday if you'd like to come back and input any further solutions and ideas. And all the information disseminated during this workshop will be provided to you, and there will be a summary report. So thank you very much. Back to Anna for the closing.
Yes, thank you, Emily, for the interactive session. I think we have gotten a lot of feedback, a lot of good ideas. So very big thanks to everybody for your inputs. Like said, we will be sharing the recording. We'll be getting back to you with a follow-up email. And like Emily said, you still have time until Friday if you feel that you have some ideas. So feel free to stay in if you have time right now, for example, to finalize some of your ideas. Also, if you come back with something that you didn't remember to write, you have the opportunity to do that until Friday. But otherwise, again, a very big thank you to all of the presenters, very good presentations. Thank you, everybody in the audience, really good questions, comments. And again, all the input on the Miro board has been very, very helpful and very good, so that we will be now taking all of your inputs and then formulating final deliverables of our framework. So stay tuned, sign up to our newsletters, sign up to our social media channels. We will be posting actively all the kind of material that we produce, communication, dissemination materials, the deliverables once they are available. So big thanks, and let's now close the official workshop session, and let's stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Is it possible to ask a quick question, even though
Of
now
course.
we are closing it? Okay, great, thank you.
Yes.
My name is Serena, and I'm representing a young startup. Well, young, funded by more than 4 million euros so far, so it's, I think, doing great. I have a question with regards to approaching brand owners. I don't know whether you got some impressions from your studies before, and whether they prefer a particular way to be addressed with regards to the incentives. For example, our company is a materials provider of biocellulose to replace plastic in many different applications, but the most important for us right now, it's the packaging applications. And we collaborate with quite a few brand owners, but it seems like even when we outline most of the incentives that you were presenting, it doesn't seem to warm them enough or take them far enough in the collaboration. So did you guys recognize a preferable mode of communication or a way to make them more attractive to some of these incentives and present to them what our material aligns with some of these incentives?
That's a very good point of view. I think John and James probably can answer more from the studies perspective. Maybe one thing that I want to also highlight before I let our experts answer to you, that it might be a good idea for you to stay tuned and participate some of our value chain building activities, because one thing is that we're also supporting SME startups in finding those value chains, forming those value chains, becoming part of the supply chain. So maybe some of those project activities could be useful for you to find new connections to those who are actually looking for supply very actively. But John, do you want to take a first attempt?
Yeah,
But
if
the
you
question-
can repeat the tail of the question, because the phone started ringing here and I was distracted a bit. I didn't pick up the phone, but still I lost concentration. So
Yes.
So did you find? Oh yeah, go ahead, Serena, if you want to repeat it yourself.
No worries. So John, you were presenting all the different incentives, right?
Right.
And we know them by heart and what they contain. But it seems like even when we align these incentives with our company goals and our material properties, it doesn't seem to work that well for some of these brand owners. And I'm wondering if you got some insight during your research and during your study on what's the best way to approach them, or if there is some sort of priority list on where to start communicating with some of these incentives.
It's not something that we directly looked at when we developed the case studies, Serena. From experience in other projects, let me think. When we did the work on the for the chemical industry in the Road to Bio project, there the feedback we got from brand owners, which were mainly the larger companies, multinationals, etc., and mainly working in, well, both markets, B2B, B2C, they said that the level playing field was really the most important thing. So they were not necessarily looking for all sorts of production support, etc. They were looking for fair level playing field.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't really answer your question in full. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's all that comes to my mind right now.
What about James? Do you have good insights?
I guess if we look at the interviews, some of the things that came up as important factors for brands were around products that were cost competitive, also the functionality of the product, particularly when applied to a specific application, the application that they would consider integrating a bio-based ingredient, for example, within. So those were the kind of key areas. And it did come up around the need for closer collaboration in developing those, so that what the brand is looking for aligns with what the bio-based industry can offer. So there needs to be closer collaboration. I'd go back to Anna's point around the Build Me the Value Chain workshop, which will be coming up later in the project, which will specifically match people who are coming from specific bio-based industries and SMEs with potential brand owners who are looking for specific areas of products, and say that maybe that's an opportunity to engage more closely with the brand owners, retailers, market end stakeholders with regards to the products that are being offered.
Wonderful. Well, thank you.
Maybe one more thing. I know, Heli, you're still online. You have quite extensive background in the topic as well. Do you have some insights that you could share with Serena on how to engage with brand owners when you're...
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, because I'm on my AirPods, so I wasn't sure. Yes, I actually look at your page, Serena, and yeah, it sounds very interesting. And I don't know if I can answer you directly, but why don't we take this? I mean, if you can email me, or I would put my email in the chat, so maybe we can address, because your product seems very kind of nice, so to say, and I think it could have like a lot of opportunities.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, definitely.
So Joanna put it there as well. So if we can, continue this discussion via email with Serena.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you for that. I was just wondering if I could pick your brain in certain insight, but I'll just leave it here. Thank you for today.
Thank you for the question. I think it's really important and really sometimes challenging part to find those partnerships. So definitely very good that you asked that, and we're happy to support you in trying to figure out how we could better help you find those value chain partners. Good. Does anybody else have any questions? If there's still somebody online, I think majority of. Oh, there we still have a few 20. So if there's anything else, we're of course available to answer any questions that you might still have. But I think it's beginning to be quite silent, and also on the chat there aren't any new things popping up. So I think we got quite a lot of good feedback that it seemed to be a good event for everybody. So I'm really happy to hear that. And like I said, let's stay tuned and continue in the next project activities. Good.
Thank you.
Yes. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.